I think it's kind of crazy that it's as cold as it is in May right now in the middle of Colorado, but what can you expect, I guess, when you live in the mountains? It's honestly just been raining a whole lot, I feel like, and because it's raining and we're like, I guess, higher up, it's like freezing cold. I don't know. It's not freezing, but it's been rainy and it's been the cold kind of rainy. For it being pretty cold though, nature's very like active lately. Lots of bugs, lots of birds, lots of bees, even in this kind of like lower temperature, but they're probably so used to it. If you are new here, welcome to the Club of for Learning and for Healing. I am your host, The Real Mel B, and this is the Thought Daughter Podcast. What the fuck is a rough patch even for? That is a question that I feel like I've asked myself so much throughout my life with all of the rough patches that I've gone through. Some situations make you sit there and think to yourself, what the fuck is this even for? Why could I possibly be going through this? What could I possibly learn from this? Why do we go through rough patches, and why does it always feel like they happen at the worst time? Or why do we get those feelings that these rough patches always happen when good things are going on, as if life can't just give you a break? I feel like all of these are very valid questions, and all of these are questions that I've asked to myself. And what was interesting enough today, I got a really good answer. So I woke up today and I had a whole bunch of things planned. I usually have things planned for every single day that I need to get done. And though, yes, I am on track to getting things done, my morning just kind of flowed with itself. I ended up going on a like 3.5 mile walk. I had to go up to the post office and drop an order off to ship out. And I live so close to the post office that sometimes to get my daily like workout in, to go for a walk, I will just walk to the post office because it's not that far. And at the same time, I get to get my 10,000 steps in. So as I was walking to the post office, I remembered that there was this river not too far from my house again that was walking distance that I've really been wanting to go to. It is like absolutely beautifully set up and everything. And that's why I was so ecstatic and ready to go. And I'm like, hell yeah. Matter of fact, I'm already outside walking shoes on, headphones on. I'm prepped for a walk. So why not just walk there right now? So after I went to the post office, I literally turned around and started walking towards this river. As I'm walking towards this river, I'm kind of thinking about, different things that have happened in my personal life that are kind of like rough, things that have happened that stress me out, how I kind of like handle rough patches in my life. Strangely enough, it was just the thought of the day, right? So I finally make it to the river and there's this beautiful bridge and I find a teeny tiny little like trail. There's a few of them that leads down to the actual river, and there's this fat section of the river that has almost like a very miniature waterfall. It's 2 levels of rock. One's kind of sitting up here and the other one's down here. And the water is like arching and rushing and rumbling over these rocks. There's a picture of the water that I took. It was absolutely beautiful and it was perfect spot for my meditation this morning. As I was meditating, I started to think about the same thought that I was thinking about when I was walking. All these things about rough patches in our life and how we handle them. And I sat there for a moment and I just simply listened. I'm definitely probably the local scary hippie in the woods that you find, because I am the person that will sit in the middle of a field somewhere and like listen to the wind, but there's a reason why, because it really does teach you things if you listen. So I sat there and I simply closed my eyes and I listened to what the water had to say. I listened to the river, the way that it rumbled, and I sat there and I'm thinking about these things that I'm thinking about, and I remember opening my eyes and looking at the river. I looked at the part of the river that was behind me, which was where like the start was of before it got to the waterfall. In that section of the river, it was very slow, calm, peaceful, and the water just gently flowed forward. You could see the mini currents in the river, but it just slightly flowed. It was gentle. And I looked at that and I was like, that's so interesting. And I feel like that really represents life on a plain level. Things are going good. Things are calm. Things are gentle. Things are just moving forward. Everything seems normal and fine. And then you get to the section of the mini waterfall, and the water moves very quick in a small section and then it rumbles. It's arching, it's tumbling down these rocks. It's a rough patch in the river. And then I look forward before it hits the second section of rock to do one last little tumble, and it pushes out so rough right in that little pit, but it flows in the middle very steadily. And then it goes down that little bit of rock and it has another mini rough patch right there. It's rumbling. And then I have my eyes follow and I see how the rest of the river calms again. It slowly starts to just go back to flowing gently with those mini currents just making its way forward. I began to look at the river as almost a representation of life. How things can seem normal, things can be calm, things can be gentle in one moment, and it can feel like out of nowhere, everything speeds up. Rough patches happen, we struggle, we go through really hard times. We feel like we can't really get a break in the middle because then it's always something else, right? And I was like, wow, this river right now is really speaking to emotions that I felt and the emotions that I've been thinking about. And then after that rough patch, the river becomes calm again, much like our life. But in that rough patch, it can be really hard to see the point. It can be really hard to understand, why did I even need to go through this rough patch in the first place if everything's just going to be fine after, like why did I need to go through all of the bullshit? You're asking yourself all these questions, and then it dawned on me for some reason, something that I've always known, but when you say it out loud in a little bit of a different tone, it really makes you realize something. And that was that a river needs rough patches to move forward. I noticed the river would not flow at all without any rough patches. That little rough patch between those two sides of the river is actually what pushed the water forward in order to keep currents flowing, so that throughout the rest of the river, the calm parts, you're able to still move forward. And I just kind of looked at the waves and I thought, how interesting. I never really thought to think of life in that way, as the rough patches are something that helps move us forward. Because after we heal through the rough patches, we come out smarter. We come out making better decisions. We come out with better knowledge of knowing how to navigate certain hard things. You come out better than you were before. You come out knowing something, learning something, loving something that wasn't there before. But you wouldn't have been able to get to this next place without that little rough patch, because you needed those waves, that rough patch, to create motion to move you forward. And I just sat there and I was like, there's my answer. What's the point of the rough patches? What's the point of, the hard things? It is quite literally to move you forward in life. The river needs it to create currents, to have motion. If that river didn't have any sort of rough patch or disturbance or any kind of anything to help push the motion, it would probably be still water. But with those little rough patches in the river flows very naturally at a very good and healthy pace. It flows so beautifully. It pushes things along so well. That rough patch cause motion. And I really want you guys to look at your life in the exact same lens. It is really hard to have hope and to see the light at the end of the tunnel when we're going through rough patches. That's a very human thing, and that is something that I don't think anyone needs to be ashamed of. And I feel like sometimes it can be hard to hear people constantly say the same old, but it'll get better, like just wait it out, eventually it'll all be fine. Which, yes, that is true, but in the moment sometimes it's not really helpful to hear, because we're sitting there and we're asking ourselves why. Same questions that I asked myself today on my walk. What is the point? Why would we even go through this? You come out stronger through every single rough patch that you go through. You come out better, more healed, more compassionate than the person you were before. And yes, the rough patches can be scary, especially while we're going through them. I mean, if you guys would have heard the water in that little rough patch, it was rough. It was very loud. It was rumbling. It was almost chaotic, but in a way in a perfect order, because it still flowed forward. It still was pushing the water forward, even if it was in a rough way, even if it was, bubbling the water and causing all of this, what feels like chaos. And I feel the same can be said about our emotions. A lot of people like to compare water to our emotions in the way that they flow and the way that it's something that just passes through, which also reminded me that those rough patches that we go through in life are things that will pass. And I know we were just talking about how sometimes it's not the best to hear, but when you are ready to hear it, understand the rough patches never last forever. That rough patch in the river was but a mere small section of the river in comparison to the whole entire river that flows beautifully, that flows calmly, that flows so well within itself. That's the same perspective our rough patches have on our life. They are such small moments in compared to our entire life. And even if they are big rough patches and they impact us in such a big way, our life is still so much bigger, and understand that you will not be stuck in that rough patch forever. It may feel like it's never ending in the moment, but it always is. That rough patch will always end, and you will come out of it again, and you will be in a calm, better environment, better than you were before, a new appreciation for things, a new love for yourself and others. But the rough patches are necessary. Our life needs motion. Our life has to flow. If you don't have an emotion, how are you going to get anywhere? That's all that I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you guys check out the link in my description box below. That's how you're going to be able to find the rest of my socials to connect with me. Check me out on Instagram and TikTok. Make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe, and share this video with a friend who needs to hear it. Also, make sure to turn on those post notifications so you can be notified on the next episode of the Thought Daughter podcast and the next time I upload any kind of cool YouTube video. I love you guys so much. Stay cunty, make money, and ask hella questions. I'll talk to you next time. Bye.